The hunting ground stretched endlessly beneath Kepler 442b's twin suns, a crimson wasteland where only the strong survived. Mira crouched behind a cluster of crystalline rocks, watching the pride of Velcran cubs stalk their prey with all the grace of newborn gazelles on ice skates. 3 months stranded on this predator world, and she'd learned one universal truth. Apex predators made terrible students, Ro. You're supposed to be flanking, not following, Mira whispered into her translator collar. The device crackled, converting her words into the subsonic growls the Velcrans understood. The smallest cub, barely the size of a shuttle pod, pressed his scaled belly lower against the rust-colored sand. His 6 amber eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of confusion she'd learned to recognize. But Mira, teacher, if I go to the side, the thornback will see me. That's the point. Mira resisted the urge to pinch the bridge of her nose. The Velcrans were brilliant engineers, capable of faster-than-light travel and quantum communications. Their adults could take down prey 3 times their size with calculated precision. But their cubs? Their cubs had been raised in climate-controlled nurseries, fed synthesized proteins, and taught that violence was a relic of their barbaric past. Then the solar flares had come, knocking out their orbital stations and collapsing their agricultural domes. Suddenly, evolution's lessons mattered again. The other 4 cubs, Kess, Thorn, Velk, and Syrah, huddled together 30 meters to Mira's left, their iridescent scales reflecting the double sunlight like a disco ball. Subtle, they were not. The thornback, a 6-legged reptilian creature with venomous quills running down its spine, grazed on crystalline lichen. It hadn't noticed the cubs yet, but only because it was partially deaf and downwind. Fortune favored the incompetent today. Mira, teacher. Ro's voice trembled through the translator. I don't want to kill it, and there it was. The fundamental problem she'd been dancing around for weeks. Mira had been a xenobiologist aboard the Temperance, studying Velcran social structures when a wormhole malfunction had dumped her escape pod directly into their planet's upper atmosphere. She'd survived the crash. Her crew hadn't. The adult Velcrans had perished in the agricultural collapse, leaving behind 37 terrified cubs who'd never had to fend for themselves. Most of those cubs had already starved. Ro, Mira said carefully, watching the thornback's tail twitch. Come back here. All of you fall back. The cubs scrambled toward her with relief written across their serpentine features. When they'd gathered around her, 5 young predators who should have been apex hunters but instead looked to a soft, mammalian alien for guidance, Mira sat down in the sand. Let me tell you about humans, she began. Ro's scales rippled with curiosity. Your species that has no claws? No venom, no armor? The species that conquered our world anyway, Mira said with a slight smile. You know what our advantage was? It wasn't strength. Wasn't speed. It was something your people forgot when they built their perfect cities and eliminated scarcity. Kess, the boldest of the cubs, leaned forward. What? We learned to share. The cubs exchanged confused glances. Their scales shifting through colors Mira had learned indicated skepticism. On Earth, she continued, our ancestors weren't the strongest. Lions could tear us apart. Bears could crush us. Even wolves hunted in packs more coordinated than ours. But we had something else. We brought our kills back to the tribe. The strong hunters fed the weak. The young learned from the old. The sick were cared for until they could hunt again. Thorn's tail coiled nervously. But that sounds inefficient. The weak should be culled so resources aren't wasted. Does it? Mira pointed at Ro. He's small. By your logic, he's weak. Should we leave him behind? No. The other cubs chorused immediately, pressing closer to Ro protectively. Why not? Mira pressed. Syrah's translator crackled with frustration. Because he's our clutch mate. We hatched together. Exactly. Mira stood dusting red sand from her worn environmental suit. You already know how to share. You've been sharing body heat at night, sharing water from my purifier, warning each other about dangers. You're just afraid to admit that cooperation isn't weakness. She walked toward the thornback, which had wandered closer during their conversation. The cubs hissed in alarm, but Mira raised a hand. Your ancestors were apex predators because they were strong, yes. But humans became apex predators because we were smart enough to know we weren't strong, so we compensated. She pulled a length of cable from her supply pack, salvaged from the Temperance's wreckage. Ro, you're fast. Kess, you're brave. Thorn, you're clever. Velk, your scales are toughest. Sierra, you have the best hearing. Mira began tying the cable into a simple snare. Alone, each of you fails. Together, using what each does best, you thrive. That's not weakness. That's why humans survived when stronger species went extinct. We shared our strengths. The cubs watched as she set the trap, then explained how they'd work together. Sierra would listen for the Thornback's approach. Velk would draw its attention as a tank. Kess would trigger the snare while Thorn positioned the killing stone. Ro, smallest and fastest, would deliver the final strike to the creature's nerve cluster, a precision job requiring speed, not strength. It took 4 attempts. The Thornback escaped twice. Velk got quilled once. Mira spent an hour extracting them. But on the 4th try, when Ro's retractable claw punctured exactly the right spot and the creature fell, something changed. The cubs didn't roar in triumph. They didn't fight over the kill. Instead, they looked at each other, scales shimmering with bioluminescent patterns Mira had never seen before. Then, without a word, they began dividing the meat into equal portions. Ro brought the first piece to Mira. "For the teacher," he said, his 6 eyes blinking in perfect synchronization, the Velkran expression of deepest respect. "Who showed us we were never too weak, only too alone." Mira accepted the offering, her throat tight. On Earth, her papers on Velkran society had been rejected as overly sentimental and anthropomorphizing. Her colleagues insisted predator species couldn't develop altruistic behaviors. She'd write that paper again, with better evidence. As the twin sun set and the cubs shared their first successful hunt, Mira realized something. The galaxy was full of strong species. But humanity's real contribution might not be strength at all. It might be teaching the strong that survival wasn't about being the best hunter. It was about making sure everyone got to eat.